Alright, I've trimmed my edges, and your project should look something similar. And I'm going to flip this over so that the back side of the quilt is showing. And you're going to take your double folded binding and you're going to unfold it. Okay? So take a moment and unfold that double folded binding. So you have it like this. And you're simply going to fold it in half. So even though you've got these strong creases here, you don't want to worry about that. You just want to fold it completely in half. Alright? And you're going to lay the binding onto the back of your placemat, aligning the raw edges. Okay, notice that the binding is actually on the placemat. We're not over here. The folded edge is on this side, and the raw edges of your binding are going to be along the raw edges of your placemat. I recommend you start this in the center of one of your edges, probably your side edge. Next, you're going to take this to your machine and you're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam all the way down your side edge here. And you're going to stop about 1/4 of an inch from this edge here. A real quick note about starting out sewing this binding that I did not show you or tell you to do, and that is to fold in this edge about 1/2 inch so it's not a raw edge right here. And I just made a mistake as I was explaining the video. I missed details sometimes. So I'm going to use a seam ripper and pull up a few stitches, and then I'm going to tuck in this raw edge here 1/2 inch. If you've already started sewing, my apologies. Hopefully you didn't and you're just watching right now to learn. And if so, what you'll want to do before you start sewing is to tuck in this raw edge, fold it in about 1/2 inch so that the edge is nice and folded versus this ugly raw edge here. Okay, I've finished stitching all the way down to the edge here, and one thing I didn't mention was that you want to back stitch right here to secure the stitch. Okay? Then you're going to fold your binding so that the raw edge is even with the raw edge of your placemat, and this folded edge here creates a 45-degree angle. Okay? So you want to pull this back far enough so that it creates that angle, and it's also even. These raw edges are completely even. Okay? Then you're going to, once that's in place, fold this binding back over so that the raw edges are aligned with the raw edges of the placemat, and your folded edge is even with the raw edge that you had just sewn. Okay? And you'll probably want to use a couple pins to hold this in place, and then you're going to stitch again a 1/4 inch stitch from the far edge over here all the way down until you get to the next corner. And let me go do that, and then I'll show you the next corner. And we're down to the second corner now. And the same thing as the first corner. You're going to take your binding and you're going to fold it back so that the raw edges are running in a straight line here. Now, if you've sewn too far, you'll know, because you won't be able to pull your binding back far enough to get your straight edges aligned. If that's the case, just get a seam ripper and just pull out a couple stitches. No big deal. Okay? So once you have this folded properly, then again, fold it back over this way and align the raw edges along the side here, and the folded edge here should be even with the raw edges here. And I think I moved it by accident, so let me do that one more time. Okay? And then I'm going to stitch again a 1/4 inch down this raw edge here, and repeat this process for the other two corners. And then once I get to the part where I started, I'll show you how I finish that off. Okay, I'm on the home stretch here. I am getting ready to sew this last stitching line from this edge over to where I had started, and I don't want this raw edge here when I'm finished. So I'm going to take the binding and open it up, fold down the end about 1/2 inch, and then refold it. And that's going to give the edge here just a nice folded edge. And then I'm going to lay it back down, and it should overlap the original end here. So here's the original end, and this overlaps it here, just about, maybe an inch. And that way you'll have a nice clean edge here and also a clean edge on the other side. So when you go to fold this over, which is what our next step will be here in a minute, you won't see any ugly raw edges here or here. It'll be nice and clean, okay? So fold under that side edge here, that end edge of your binding, and then finish the stitching. And then I'll show you how to finish the binding on the front side of the placemat. Okay, I've finished sewing all 4 sides on the back for the binding, and now you're going to flip your placemat over to the top side, and you're going to fold over your binding to the front of your placemat. Okay, you want the edge here to lay flat within that fold, and you want the fold to be snug up against your raw edges here. Okay, and make sure that this edge here far exceeds this stitching line here by at least 1/4 of an inch. Okay. Now I recommend using some straight pins for this. Go ahead and once you've got it folded the way you want it to, go ahead and secure it in a few places. And once you get to the corner, for now, you're going to just leave it straight. Let me pull this back so you can see a little better. You're just going to fold this over all the way down, just like that. You're going to leave this flat for now, and you're just going to fold everything evenly over that raw edge, just for that one side. Okay? Then you're going to fold this back over to the back side, and on the edge that you've just pinned, you're going to sew in the ditch, meaning your needle is going to fall inside the seam here, and you're going to sew from corner all the way in the seam to the other corner. You're going to sew in the ditch so that you don't have an extra sewing line, stitching line really being obvious in the back, so it's nice and neat. And then because you folded this edge over far past the stitching line, you'll see a stitching nice and neat along this top binding here that'll make everything look nice and clean, okay? And then cut your thread, and then I'll show you how to do the next side. And this is how the front side will look. You'll see the stitching about in the center of your binding, and the edges are nice and finished, and it gives a nice kind of casual look. The binding's a little loose right here, and that kind of goes along with this whole kind of fun, off-center look. There are other ways to bind, but this is one way, okay? So, and if you look on the back here, even though it's on video, even if you're looking at this in person, you really can't see any extra stitching here because it's nice and deep in the ditch. That's where the needle had fallen, okay? And now we're going to do the next edge. So, I'll turn this so you can see, and kind of make sure that this is nice and flat over here, and then you're going to fold this binding over just like you did on this edge here. When you get to the corner, you're going to fold it so that the fold is at a 45-degree angle, creating the mitered corner. And once you have that the way you like it, go ahead and take a straight pin and pin that in place. And then you just fold this over the raw edge just like you did on the first side, all the way down to this corner here. And then you'll do the exact same thing. You will flip this over, and on the new side here, you're going to stitch in the ditch from corner to corner. And then you're going to flip it over and do the exact same thing for the other 2 edges, okay? Congratulations on making your Valentine's Day quilted placemat. This is mine, and it's really simple, but it was a lot of fun to make, and I can make a bunch of these real quick so I can have a nice fun table for Valentine's Day. So this was mine. It was a lot of fun to make. I'm glad you made it with me. I'm Jenny T with SimpleSewingProjects.com.